All right, we're live.
Okay. Hello, this is Joe Corneli. I'm in the scenic Ljubljana, Slovenia, in the Best Western Hotel, joined by Charlie Danoff, Lisa McDonald, and Charlotte Pierce, in various locations, east, west, and central in the U.S. And this is the Peeragogy Accelerator Week 2, in which we are, let's say, gently accelerating. It's not too fast yet, so don't worry. Charlotte was saying she might
have a
have
manual
vertigo issues, so don't worry, Charlotte, you'll be okay. This is not a vertigo-inducing rate yet. So, but Lisa's here. She wants to take a look at strolls down corporate vision lane or something. How can we look at that? Maybe we can ask her to say some things about that. But the main thing I want to get you all looking at is this hack pad for notes on today's conversation, and I'll put the same notes into the chat just for the record, and they're good for the record, and that's hopefully the focus in this call. Working? Yes.
Tell me if my clicking is too noisy and I'll mute.
No problem. Hello, we've been joined by Kurt. He's got headphones. Kurt, hello.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good. Please introduce yourself since we've not spoken before.
Kurt Vega. I'm an alumni of one of Howard's courses, and I am an adjunct at the Fashion Institute of Technology, teaching social media.
Nice. Cool.
Nice.
Yes, he's very fit. That's right. I've seen some interesting projects going on at FIT. Cool. Well, I'm Joe. I don't know who's left to right for you. So Charlie is there. Oh, they have labels. Charlie is there, and Lisa is the smiley face there. And we're looking at this hack pad, which is kind of good for real time. Yes, let me see if I can turn mine on. Then you'll know who I am. That's good for some real-time things, but it may be we're jumping right in the middle. So let me summarize last week. That's good for everyone anyway. So we're starting this Peeragogy Accelerator, trying to find a way to offer mutual support between peer projects. You can say a little bit about some of your projects, Kurt. That'd be great, or your students' projects, or however it works for you there. That'd be interesting to know more about it. But just so that you get the hang of it, why don't we give a quick rundown of what we've been doing in the last week vis-a-vis the accelerator. So that's what this review pad is about. And I'm going to switch my eyes over to the pad and start typing some things and reading what I'm seeing there. So it says here, review what was supposed to happen. Establish what is happening, what's right or wrong, what do we learn or change, what else should we change going forward. So those are some questions we can all answer individually. Nice word. Yes. I don't know quite, there's an agenda here. 1, 1, 1. I don't know what's going on. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so yes. So yeah, oh, okay, I see what you mean here with this list, Charlie. Okay, so for example, Planet Math, IPNE, uncertainty principle, and say other.
I just wanted to mention if you're watching and you can't participate on video, the hack pad is a live action note-taking device.
I can also.
I'm gonna put the hackpad link in the event page.
Excellent, thank you.
And then, Kurt, do you have any? Is that what Joe said about the accelerator make sense to you, or do you have any questions?
Yeah, no, I'm sort of jumping in, but I understand what patterns are, and So I think I'll just be able to follow along.
Awesome.
Awesome.
You wanna
And
take a look?
I'll share some mind maps of some of the stuff we've done at FIT.
Cool.
Very cool.
That sounds good. Yeah. Feel free to say a little bit more about what you do, since we've not met you before. We don't want to just dominate the conversation proceeding with business as usual. It's a new.
Kurt, if you need me to put any websites up for a screen share, I can do that too if it's less distracting for you.
Okay. Since 2011, I've been teaching applications for social media course at FIT, which is really the first social media course there, and that's been a lot of fun. I took Howard's course, which was fantastic, and I just I co-wrote a new course that's going to be called Digital Literacy for Designers, and that's a co-taught course, so there'll be 2 instructors, which is different for FIT, and I'm also pretty much through writing a curriculum for processing for artists, which is
Awesome.
a computer language. So just trying to push those types of things forward. But I'm really interested in something like this accelerator project, which giving more more tools to the students to really design their own learning would be obviously the best. So hopefully all those things are happening anyway, but I thought actually checking in with people that are explicitly trying to do that would be a great idea.
Yeah, there was a young woman who joined the presentation we did at in England. Where was it? Newcastle, a month or 2 back, who was previously in an art program, and she was explaining how they did almost their entire curriculum was really peer driven. I thought, wow, art students already know a lot about this peeragogy stuff because they do peer critique and peer review. So I don't know if that's your experience, but
well, it's true, and a lot of the things are very project driven. I break the class up into teams, and so there is sort of that. It's probably not as big a stretch as it is for some institutions.
Cool. Nice. Yeah. So we're all with different backgrounds: publishing, teaching, research, business. So you've got quite some variety here, and I think that breadth of different viewpoints is also a benefit. Because there's FIT, there's lots of different programs you can study there too, and if you can get to different people in different programs talking to each other, they're not all artists exactly. So, cool. Okay, so I'm kind of trying to populate this thing with links to other pads that may end up being just a lost cause because the links aren't working great. But anyway, does anyone have something they want to say about the last week? Their activities.
Put them up there, Joe, and I can call them up as things go. I don't know, Kurt, you put something up, but I can't log on it.
I'll do it slowly. Go ahead. Why don't you guys talk a little bit about your experiences over the last week, and I'll round up after I've arrested some links.
So I for every 2 months for the Uncertainty Principle, we have a release party for the latest issue. And the past weekend, Saturday, was the release party for this issue that's coming out at the end of June. So we had that. It was very fun. And so the issue, there'll be the Peeragogy Accelerator issue and release for the Uncertainty Principle. And the bi-monthly, it's a bi-monthly or slightly less, hopefully going back to bi-monthly, but zine that I published. You can find some old issues on theup.biz, but which needs to be updated. But we're gonna publish people's write-ups about what they're doing, what they're planning on doing in the accelerator for this session, and then at the end of it, we're gonna also publish what actually happened. So if you want inclusion in the June issue, so if you get it the deadline at the bottom of this pad by this Sunday, send something based on the course outline, or the accelerator outline that we had agreed upon based on the Peeragogy and action plan that we went. You can find more details on last week, Accelerator Week 1. And then I'll put my email address that you can send it to down there also. Yeah, so that went well.
In 5 words, what is it that you want? I'm a little unclear.
What is it that I want in 5 words?
Or the uncertainty principle.
I want your weeks 1 and 2 right up.
Right up.
That's
on our particular project.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
I apologize for my lack of clarity. And yeah, so that's so that was my last week, and
cool. Oops, am I still here? Sorry, I have this. I get kicked off the internet thing.
You're good. You're good.
I'm stopping screen sharing. So, where you're putting interesting things in the chat. Why will the next 10 years not be the last? Interesting. Okay, Charlotte, do you want to explain a little bit about the IPNE over the last week?
Sure.
You can also have that right in here if you want to type rather than talk. But since we're asking you to talk, I'll type. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I've assumed we had a bunch of several board members resign, and they had just been elected. So I assumed the presidency, having been secretary of the Independent Publishers of New England. So we've been trying to establish some systems that to connect with members and board members to make them feel like they know what their role is, they know what they're going to benefit from by the organization. And it just kind of comes home to me again after having been on the Peeragogy project for a year and a half or so, that everybody needs to have to have a benefit coming in. They have to have a visible benefit if they're going to participate. And I think in Peeragogy Accelerator here, we may need to find a way to articulate that a little better. I know we do in IPNE, but we have made progress. We know that that's what we need to do. We need to have simple communications. These are patterns, I think, too, but simple and regular communications, visible member benefits for board members and rank and file members, a lively roster of activities. So we have, and we have to have, lots of lead time on stuff and a consistent message. I think that's what I've learned this last week, and it's a work in progress.
That's pretty huge and somewhat unexpected, startling news to hear that you're in the presidency. So that will certainly make the next 8 weeks an exciting time for IPNE for you. So the thing is, as I forgot to add, that as I realized that I didn't really want this presidency solely myself, I drafted a co-president, and she's actually a former president. So we have some institutional memory and a founding member. So it's been good, and we work well together. We know that from past experience. Pattern. And so yeah, so we have a co-presidency, and of course we're driving each other slightly nuts, but I think that's kind of unavoidable as long as we have a sense of humor and tolerance about it. Pattern. We will make it through.
So.
Definitely big news, and some of the stuff we've typed in, I typed in already ahead to like, what did we learn or change? It sounds like there's some things even learned through that experience applying to the Peeragogy project. So I've typed that into item 4 in this list here.
And there's a lot of personalities that have come up. You know, that people don't like so-and-so style of doing something, and you know, we're all volunteers. There's one paid staff member on the IPNI executive board, and she's like, I mean, I guess I shouldn't really talk about it too much online, but you know, we all kind of drive each other nuts sometimes, and you just have to kind of.
Nuts driving details not necessary online.
But you know I drive. I'm taking responsibility for driving people nuts sometimes too, because I often have brainstorming. I was going to say gasms, but you know, like sessions where I think all these ideas are so great and nobody can really absorb it in their bandwidth. So, you know, knowing yourself and being upfront about it is good too, and saying, you know, I'm sorry, you know, I realize that people can't take this in, but what can you take in?
Yeah. Well, yes, at least you can sympathize, you know, because I remember this sounds so much like you when certain people, such as myself and Fabrizio, were saying, oh, why don't we try a new technology for Peeragogy every 3 days or something, and you're sort of saying, well, wait a second, I haven't caught up with the last 17 technologies you guys were suggesting. So,
yeah. I mean, there's something to be said for being flexible and ready to jump on, you know, the next conveyor belt, but you also have to get something done. And I think that the review, the 5 things that we are supposed to be talking, or you know, reviewing, were very, very helpful for me to glance at before we started today.
Cool. Well, that reminds me, we should revisit the previous week because there was kind of this overall assignment. So this is a good check-in about what was going on. But
and I'm going to interrupt real quick. Just to say I have to go, but thank you. This was awesome. I look forward to checking in on the HackPad later tonight to see. We've already got a good amount of stuff there. But then also just a reminder, so this Sunday, deadline for like your weeks 1 and 2 assignment, which I copy-pasted there below. So it's all at the bottom of the HackPad, and then that will be published in the Uncertainty Principle.
Cool.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Good to see you, Charlotte. Nice to meet you, Kurt. Good to talk to you, Lisa and Joe.
Okay.
Yeah, likewise, Charles.
Okay, so yeah, so this time we were supposed to come up with a plan, basically, and some kind of informal agreement for the group. So it sounds like Charlotte has definitely, at least has a brewing plan coming up. So what is your plan for IPNE, Charlotte? Do you have a master plan for?
Just kind of being mindful of what works and why we're doing it. You know, we're doing it so that we can nurture independent publishing in New England. So, you know, it's not just about having an organization to have an organization.
Yeah.
It's having an organization so that it has leverage for its members, and you know, educating those members about what their benefits are by being active in the organization.
That sounds like a good and important next step, because I know even, for example, on the technology level, what do you think? Will you resolve? You can't immediately resolve the technology questions you're having, but you know why it's relevant.
Right, and we had I had started, you know, based on like a good solid year of Peeragogy Hangouts almost every week across the globe. I thought, you know, certainly people in New England could meet online, video, but that is not the case. We have gone back to free conference calling and phone conference calling, and nobody seems to be able to kind of unstick themselves from that sort of familiar format, and you know, it chafes me. I get so frustrated, but I'm trying to, you know, put myself in their position and like, what are we really trying to get done? So.
Well, the other thing that you had mentioned a while ago were these hangouts in real life or whatever. And since you are all within a region, it seems totally possible to have those hangouts in real life, which will cut right through the technology thing, maybe at the cost of some gas miles or bus tickets for people or whatever. But you know.
Yeah, those have been great. We have one coming up on June 24th or something. It's a regional Metro Boston region coffee, you know, so we'll have a bunch of people there, and then we had a conference, and then we'll have another one in July, a presentation speaker type thing.
Yeah, well, so, you know, speaking of New England, I mean, if you had a strong and thriving publishing community, which I'm sure you do in Boston and the Boston area, you know, that would practically speak for New England. I mean, New Hampshire and so forth would just have to try to crawl and catch up, you know. What are they going to do?
Well, we have the Vermont Mafia, which is the number of board members and speakers, and there's Champlain College has this Champlain Publishing Initiative in Vermont, Burlington, and they are they were just all over, you know, having the conference in Burlington next year, and you know, so there's kind of, even within New England, there's this like pull to my little corner of the world, and yeah. So what is, you know, what's the answer? Do we float around to different places, or do we try and be central? You know, kind of working.
You know, what you could conceivably try would be I think the Peeragogy way would be to have a meetup. Say a monthly meetup, like say third Saturday of the month, pick a random day, and make sure that someone at that meetup knows how to do Google Hangouts. So you wouldn't require everyone to do it, but you would have one person in each state who would know how to do it. That's not too much to ask. And just say, look, if you don't know how to do it, I will sit with you on the phone until you figured out how to do it, and you'll be the representative for Vermont. Or, I was curious, is Maine part of New England, or are they kind of off on their own? They are part. Okay, we'll see.
They are off on their own, but they, you know,
they're nominally part.
Generally tolerate their part.
On the hopes Stephen King will publish with you guys. That'd be awesome. He's just released a new pulp thriller kind of novel, so I've got to read that trashy stuff from Stephen King. Anyway, sorry. Okay, so let me try a little.
How big is the organization?
Well, we have about 150 publisher members, and their potential is much greater, but it's that, and some of them are authors with a single book, you know, sort of authorpreneurs, and some of them are small publishers like me with one or two books, and I think one of our former board members has 30 books on his list. They're innovative people. They're a kind of a, no, I wouldn't say an odd bunch, but you know, they've got their own little quirky passions, and that's what they write about or publish books about. So.
Do you hear me, guys?
Yeah.
Okay, I was having that typical thing where the hotel was throwing me off of the internet. But that's what makes them independent, and yet, you know, and yet they have got to work with each other here. So that's cool. I have also good news, or at least relatively big news about Planet Math, if you guys would like to know about that. So, Kurt, I am a board of directors member of a nonprofit in the US called Planet Math, which is I'm back. There's more of me. Okay, I'm back again. So someone else hopefully will save the chat because it's completely gone from me. So I'm a member of the board of directors of this Planet Math org, which has been around since 2001 or so. and my PhD focused on turning it into a learning environment for mathematics, which is not exactly a fait accompli, but it was a plan has been made. And I've been talking with a statistician at UC Berkeley who's been interested in bibliographic data because it's very data-driven, and interested in making a giant digital library for mathematics because that's what he's passionate about. He's also a great statistician. And Planet Math is in that space, so I think what we've been doing is quite relevant. We've been friends with him for a while. But as of this week, similar to Charlotte's news, I was chatting with him about using his software, and he said, we need a maintainer for this software. Could you do it? I could even potentially pay you a little bit, maybe. And I said, sure, why not? You know, I'm planning to use the software anyway, called Bib Server. So basically the plan with that is to try to get this software from Jim, who's the statistician, talking with the software we've made for Planet Math, which will be nice because Planet Math does not have great bibliographic references, although it's an online encyclopedia. And I think this, if we can get it to work, will really flush things out. And I think putting that much work in on both platforms will count as maintenance, because it will, you know, we can say, look, it works, and then maybe we'll have a nice demo. So my friend Ray, who's just in the New York metropolitan area, has some papers that he's interested in uploading.
Do you have any interest, or this might be outside of what you're doing, in terms of systems work? You know, general systems, system dynamic models and things like that.
I mean, yeah, I do have interest. So one of the people I cited in my thesis was this guy Beer, who, if you're interested in systems.
Oh, I'm very well Beer, yeah. Stanford.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I cited him. One of the people I'd learned about through some random Peeragogy conversation. That was cool. What would I say about general systems? Well, yes. In fact, one of the things. So I was talking with my friend Ray and his collaborator, and we were thinking, well, how can these systems? We were specifically thinking about artificial intelligence systems, but in general, how can these systems bootstrap? Which is what we're trying to do here in the Peeragogy project. So how could we bootstrap as a bunch of kind of independent people who don't always check in every week? How could we build a university? It seems on the face of it, it seems a bit unlikely that it could happen, but on the other hand, there's a lot of smart people thinking about this kind of thing in the back of their head. Could we build kind of fantastic, great solution to the world's education problems, you know, in a very serious time.
There's actually somebody I just know him through an online thing, you know, sort of forum group, and he's got some stuff, really good stuff actually, that you know is open source, published. You know, there are YouTube videos now, so I could at least point you in his direction. I really thought they were fantastic, and I think some of them are interactive too, so you can go in and change, you know, different parameters and see how that affects the system. And you know, they're openly published, so I don't think he would have a problem.
Neat. Yeah, that sounds cool. Again, with this other stuff, we're thinking more about simulations and so forth. So it sounds like this guy is part way, maybe all the way there in that direction. So that's good. So really, Planet Math, I would say this week has been an interesting week, taking another sort of unexpected turn. I would love to know about those references to this guy online. But the other thing I'm working on, so I'm here sitting in my hotel room, and I've been doing some planning about my day job as well, and how am I gonna manage my research need? And I guess I've come up with a justification for all this data-driven stuff, and I can tell you what that is, which is if we were to build a gigantic database about mathematics, that would really, really help if we're ever going to try to do anything in AI, to have it there all chewed up and pre-chewed, available for computers to think about. So that's kind of my brief update on what I've been thinking about and doing this week.
Joe, I was curious about your collaborations, and you mentioned Ray and your statistician, and just wondering about the dynamics among the people you work with, or do you kind of work in isolation, or?
Well, so I have an official research group in London that I work with. Many of them are here for this conference, and then I have a bigger official research network because I'm paid through this European grant. And many of those people are here at this conference as well because it's about computational creativity. But Ray is basically an independent researcher in New York, in the New York area. Jim is not independent, but noted statistician at UC Berkeley. And how do I work? Well, you know, there's other collaborators in Germany and so forth. So I would say a lot of this stuff is kind of the fringe. So like you said, it's all volunteers, you know. So like Jim is interested in this stuff because he's interested. Ray is interested because he's interested. There isn't an official org. And I think one of the things that I noticed when I was talking with Jim recently is that there isn't really even, say, a website for people who were interested in this kind of stuff. So let's say that Kurt or Kurt's friend happened to be interested and said, oh yeah, digital library for mathematics, that sounds great. Where can I find out more? There wouldn't be a place like that at the moment. So that's one of the things I'm going to try to set up is at least some kind of website so that people will know, oh yeah, here's where the interest group goes, and I think that's important. So maybe that's a pattern of some kind, is to have a place like IPNE is the org, is the place you guys have created it.
Yeah, we still we have a blog, but we don't really have an internal conversation. We have a bulletin, a forum tool on our website, but is not used. Kind of defaults to social media sites.
Yeah. But at least you have a kind of name, and you have you have a way to get in touch with each other. Whereas I think, you know, for these broader interests in digital libraries for mathematics, people have been talking about that for 10 or 15 years, but everyone does their own little experiments around, you know, and they don't talk with each other. They maybe all have similar wishes, and if you could kind of put them all together and say, yes, this is our very long checklist of things we'll need to do, let's get started, it might rationalize the process a little bit, but yeah, I think looking forward, we kind of have to. I mean, I would love to turn Planet Math from being just a volunteer project into something with a staff, but I think the first thing to do is to do a demo. Say, okay, here's the kind of thing. It's a demo. This is the kind of thing we can do. Now, at the start of the meeting, before we got into recording, Charlotte, we were talking about the handbook version 3, and I would say maybe the handbook version 3 is that for us. It's like, here's what we can do. It's been 3 years of work on this thing. Here is our best demo of the power of peeragogy. You want it, you can have it, you can hold it in your hand, you can have it on your Kindle, or whatever. And if anyone wants to know, like Michelle Bowens or someone else says, what can peeragogy do for us? Well, here's an example, and here's our candidate, and that could be fairly understandable to a newcomer, even, you know, or Kurt. So that would be something you might be interested in. How would you use our handbook?
Yes, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
But at the same time, would you use the handbook? Because we've often had these doubts about is it a book or is it something you've got to do in order to appreciate it? So by showing, is it about the book, or is it by showing up to the meetings, which are free and online because it's all volunteer for the moment. And yeah, and what's missing? Because at the moment this is a very small group of people with an active interest in doing peeragogy in one way or another.
Well, I think from it, maybe it's good that, you know, that this is my first time, because that's I can give you like a fresh outsider view. But it seems, and I know you guys probably have a lot of this, but since you're already talking patterns, it sounds like maybe, you know, as the very basis, you sort of need an on-ramp pattern for people to get involved in some of these things.
Cool.
And just so that so that I can understand a little bit better, how have you guys gotten into the whole idea of patterns? Like I've read the entire Christopher Alexander set. I mean, because I was a musician and a programmer, and actually, well, even before it became really popular in programming,
Cool.
I was exposed to this stuff. So, what's your exposure to?
How did I learn about it? I think I was the one who introduced it to the group. I remember I learned the most about it by sitting at the MIT library reading his books.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a long time ago. In 2000 and not that long ago. It was the second time I was at MIT hanging out. 2009, not that long ago. So I don't know what drove me to pick up his books. Probably they just look cool covers, or what's this stuff about it? I don't know.
They're beautiful. So you're talking about the whole set, his big set.
Yeah, there's the big blue books and then the little books. I don't know. It might have been I just stumbled across them in the library, or maybe I'd looked up something about patterns a long time ago. But yeah, they were in the back of my mind from that. And I wasn't using them very well at the start of the Peeragogy project. I said, oh, this is a pattern, which just meant saying, here's something that keeps happening. And then since then, Charlotte has done a lot of editing to help make them comprehensible. And my PhD examiners sort of said, well, what do you mean when you say pattern? And forced me to revisit the formalism of Christopher Alexander and to kind of state my claim about what I've been.
Yeah, to me, it's kind of, I started reading about him, and I didn't really understand what it meant in the context of the project. And so George and I started editing them, and through the editing, I came to understand what they were, and to me, they're kind of fragments of templates, and they're small enough so that you don't have to use a whole template, which may not fit your project. You can use this part of it. This part of it, like they're kind of like little components, universal truths, motivation, platforms, frequency, things like that.
Yeah, they're almost. I mean, they could be viewed a lot of different ways. I think it's really interesting that the software people have taken it up, and it really shows that they can be taken. Not that it wasn't in architecture, but it shows that you can take these patterns and then move them over into actual physical objects, or actually get something done with them, because they are a lot like recipes to me.
Yeah.
Although there's a built-in invitation for everybody to come in and use it as a group learning process, where you have something that you have that's a structure, and then you can refine it and build on it. And it's so simple that, like you, Charlotte, when you first look at it, you are scratching your head a little bit, and then you think, no, this really makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, because when I first saw them, I thought, this is just a bunch of blather. It's like some intellectual stuff that they're trying to impose on, into a structure. But then you start dissecting them, and they're like little nuggets,
Yeah.
So I'm really excited that you guys are using it, because it's obviously I'm a big fan.
Cool. Well, I mean, one simple way to revise the book is we could radically throw out everything except the pattern catalog, and just focus on that and sort of expand that and write our way around it, because it somehow has become the heart of the book. That's my opinion. But that would be a fairly radical cut. Also, my current boss, that's how he writes papers, is we write all these things, we're going to put them all together, but then he rips it all out and says we're going to start over from scratch again. So I'm inspired by his daring editing methods. But yeah, we've been looking at a lot. If you look at this debate graph site, Kurt, this is just starting up. That would be something you might be interested in. They're trying to make a pattern language of the commons, or for the commons.
I'm excited about that, because I actually think that the next step in a lot of this is a way to make an online tool that will be able to that would be based on patterns, that would be able to part of what it would do is it would help like a decision making tool.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't force anybody into anything. So you take the basic pattern that you say, okay, here's what we're working on. How many people could get behind this as an idea to form a group? And then as you go down, you could actually, as things are added to the pattern, you could actually split, fork off. So because what you need is you need a group of people that would be moved enough, and you guys were talking about this, to be moved to commitment and action. And that may be, if you start out with 100 people, you may end up with 10 groups of 10 that are actually really committed.
Yeah.
And if you had a tool to be able to help people do that, I think it would be really helpful. And it would also open up the chance of having project-based things where you might have group A and group B, and they may only agree on, one or two things. But if you could see that, graphically, you could put together virtual groups on a project basis.
Yeah, that's a cool thing. It's like a kind of a GitHub for humanistic or not coding projects, because GitHub already does coding projects. We had met these other folks online called Humanity Online, and they seem to want to get all 100 people to agree on one project, at least at first. Like, they may have revised, but it seems like, yes, that would be a way to squeeze the life out of 99% of the people in the group.
Yeah, it's just not practical. It's not practical, really. And the other thing is, I think a lot of these things suffer from trying to force, groups of people into one thing. Whereas, if it doesn't work, just fork.
That's
inspiring. And then you can do that recombining thing when you find that there are actual overlaps.
Yeah. Yeah, very similar to something that one of our Peeragogy colleagues, Dorothea, has been talking about, because she's very interested in open science, and this is how she thinks science works, but it would be much better supported if there was some software that actually helped you along the way, or how science should work.
Right.
So I hope you two will be able to talk.
And you could also fold in, which you've also mentioned, is the fact that you could easily support a geographic piece of it, so that people that are close together, that's another way of forming a group.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So that even the IPNE would have these dimensions. So what is okay? So it is not working for. What do you mean? Yeah. Let's say what that means. So I guess what that means is, suppose how would I put it? Suppose that, for example, suppose I got frustrated working on the handbook, and I said, look, writing this pedagogy handbook is tedious. I'm going to just take the patterns out. Oh, you're joking. Okay, so you know what I mean by fork it. But let me finish my story. So I'll just take the patterns out, and I'll make a pedagogy patterns handbook. Without all the other stuff. I'll say, this is what works for me. And some people, Kurt might say, yeah, totally into it. And Charlotte might say, no, we need the narrative, and we need the ramping up. And we might say, yeah, we need to ramp up, but we just need it for 3 pages. We don't need 70 pages of ramping up or something. So we could have 2 different projects, and that would be perfectly fine. That's
right.
And the handbook to be infinitely forkable in a kind of Borgesian way, to say, okay, you've got the,
absolutely. And then I think that, because I think you're thinking along the same lines, is that the possibilities for recombining these things in other dimensions then opens up when you're doing it if you were doing it in a system. It's beyond the fact of just, talking about it. You'd have to have a mechanism so that you would understand how these subgroups are formed, and then how they could be reformed, on different levels depending on, things that you have in common, and that you can actually agree on, and that you can actually move to actionable items.
Yeah, so you should try out Debate Graph. I should also just represent another person who's not here, Doug Breitbart, who you might know from other Howard Rheingold things. He is so against software platforms. He thinks software platforms are a waste of everyone's time, because he thinks they're always going to be superseded. Well, I'm a programmer, so I can't agree with him, and I just spend a lot of time on my PhD building a software platform, but I should represent his view because he's made a fairly convincing case. You guys don't need platforms. His point is, just use what's there. Don't build anything new. Don't use what's there. Now, I can almost guarantee you Doug Breitbart has got a standard Windows PC and he may never have installed anything but Notepad on it because he's just using it there. And his life with software may be proportionately boring as a result of that. However,
it's fantastic to read something that's a complete opposite. Sure,
it is an interesting perspective to wonder, and it's one of our patterns actually. The pattern is, should we use or make? Well, here's a great opportunity. DebateCraft is already there. I think it may be open source. It's certainly under active development, so you should use it. Give it a try, and let's see if it's open source. It's been used already by CNN, the White House, blah, blah, blah. Let me ask if it's open. I'll ask him. I'm in touch with the developer. He doesn't say anything here about open source, but yeah, I should harass him about that, actually.
For instance, I mean, just off the top of my head, how do you get somebody that wants to collaborate in New York and California? I mean, I guess he's putting software platforms in a different category than, like calling somebody up on the phone or even doing a Google Hangout then, right?
Sorry, you're gonna have to say again.
How do you collaborate, over great distances when you have multiple people in a team without a software platform? And I will agree that the platform itself is limiting, and there's all sorts of problems with any platform. But
yeah, he doesn't say don't use software. He just says that, for example, for Peeragogy, we shouldn't build our own custom platform. We should just use other people's tools.
Oh, I see. Well, I mean, probably, building something like what I'm talking about from the ground up would be really, it would be unbelievable, and you would want to be able to take large chunks of things and build them in pieces and use whatever is open. You'd still need somebody to integrate it, but
yeah. So again, there we go. That's I think the solution of this user make dilemma is you use and make. You make something out of what was there before. In fact, everyone does that all the time. You're building your own kind of platform. So
right.
So I did argue back to Doug, and I think that's something like what I argued. But anyway, so yeah. Okay. Well, Kurt, it sounds like we have quite a bit of interest in common between patterns and software platforms and this debate perhaps stuff, so I hope we can follow up about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sounds great.
Are you usually available at this time of the day, Kurt, or are you interested?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I just happen. I mean, I see your posts, Charlotte. You do a good job of keeping stuff in my stream, but I just happened to be right here, and it was like, oh, it's right now.
Well, that's good to know. What really catches you, because once in a while we get somebody like that, and it's a really enriching experience.
Yeah,
I was thinking,
definitely, Charlotte, I'll just re-emphasize the fact that because I see all the stuff that you post, and it's very high quality and stuff I'm interested in, that me just logging on now was really a process of you doing all that work, over months.
Mm.
Yeah, and I've seen you doing the same, so I knew who you were when you showed up, and I think a lot of our sort of a cohesion in Peeragogy has been that we just know and like each other really well, and we sort of forgive any things that drive us nuts about each other. And I make hats for everybody that's involved.
Cool. And my semester was over.
Yeah, right. Right. Yeah, I was thinking if we could work on some. I mean, I don't know if we're aiming. I forget what the week plan says, but like, are we kind of aiming to sort of help each other on our individual projects and then like trade off sort of focused brainstorming on them, and so we'll go on Planet Math and IPNI.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, this has been, so I hope, especially since Charlie's given us this opportunity to write up what are the problems we're trying to solve. This is just the intro. So if our deadline is this Sunday, we can't say all the things we're going to do, but absolutely, what are we looking forward to doing, sharing that with each other, what are the problems we're trying to solve through brainstorming or discussing or just practically working through some things.
Well, I think then we kind of interlock. We're not obligated to each other, but if I work on Planet Math and you're probably going to reciprocate if you can, and working on IPNI if I have an issue that I need to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I mean, we can keep. This is a great segue for the week 2 homework, which is other people can support you in achieving your goal and make the work more fun too. So we've already got the people in this group, but there is the question of, can we recruit other people? And Kurt, magically appeared to prove that it's true. Just setting up a space for people to collaborate can possibly bring out some new insights. But for example, and I won't pressure you on this, Kurt, but for example, maybe there are people at FI2 who are, say, looking for internships, and maybe some of them are interested in publishing, and some of them could become interns of Charlotte, although Charlotte might need to rent a bigger office, so she's going to have many interns going at once. Or maybe some of them are interested in programming, and they could come over to Planet Math or whatever. So things like that. Or we might move forward, and we might say, well, who else would we have to talk to make an open debate platform if this debate graph isn't open source? Things like that. So this is kind of an outreach week. Let me real quick. I'll shut up and create the homework tab on Peeragogy.
And actually, I absolutely need to read through the handbook.
Well, read it with a red marker. The best case scenario would be to read the paper version with a red marker and mark it up and make changes. But there's also online on HTML and a PDF version too.
Yeah,
Okay.
and if you, the way we work is we just, whoever's able to gets editing access through Joe or Charlie, and then you just go to work on it. It's kind of a very trusting environment.
Okay. Well, I definitely wanted to absorb what's there.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, since you're interested in patterns, I'm a little bit sad that I haven't produced a new printout. So the website is the master copy, and the pattern stuff has been changed a lot in the last few months. So, so before me telling you to read everything on paper, I would say the patterns section online is it's called Practice, and then you find all the patterns there. They're all updated recently, but you can. You're motivating me to make a new paper version of it, so do it however you like, but that's a quick insight.
And we'll be setting up some handbook sessions as well.
True. Yeah. Totally.
Probably the next round of Accelerator could be the handbook, maybe?
Well, it's always going, I mean, that's the thing, is we were hoping that we would get some insights from this, so we're saving all of our notes from this, and getting it into that. So if anyone wants to come and represent, a handbook as a project and say, look, I'm focusing on the handbook, or we can all spend some time on it. I'm focusing on the handbook. Here's the things we've got to change. Let me do what I said I was going to do by turning this off. You guys can talk to each other. It'll be 2 minutes, and I'll have this thing uploaded. I've got to
Lisa, is there anything you wanted to add verbally besides jokes?
Oh. And I didn't do that verbally, and it was a bad joke. No, actually, I'm okay.
Tell us a little bit about what your interest was in joining up.
Okay, well, my interest has to do more with business, and I was involved in one of the jobs I had was in the automotive industry and product planning, and we were working with people all over the world, manufacturing, design, all the different elements. So there wasn't a really good training program, so there was a lot of peer-to-peer learning, and the way the culture was set up allowed for that. It was not very traditionally structured, and so it was working it worked very well. Over time, however, the structure started to change, and so my media psychology background was also curious because we sometimes do irrational things for what we think are rational reasons, and so just trying to tie all of that together. But the peer-to-peer learning and that dynamics was something that was interesting to me to understand how that works and be able to identify the environments in which that works, as well as understand the trade-offs, because I think that was one of the reasons why it was it started to get knocked down, because there's strong benefits, but there's also some weaknesses or some discomfort areas with that lack of structure. And so in an effort to try to make it more understandable to some people, they tried to impose structure on it. And in imposing the structure, you lose that fluidity. And so just kind of understanding that balance and all of that is what I'm interested in, and this is obviously a key component.
Cool. Well, by the way, as we were just talking about the handbook, new chapters, and although I was joking about cutting everything because the patterns, new handbook pieces are welcome at any time. So if you wanted to focus on writing up those experiences as a chapter and use the discussions here as a way to kind of get some feedback and think about drafts, of that, and make your vision, document this kind of revisioning quest for corporate structures based on your experiences. That would be great. It would be a wonderful case study of peeragogy in action. Kind of, we could call it, the peeragogy, the rise and fall of peeragogy.
Yeah, it was very interesting, and that's really what drew me to the group when I saw Harold speak. And I didn't know what he was going to be speaking about or what we were going to be talking about, but it really fell right into this area of interest and project that I had in the back of my mind. So I'm listening with that in mind. You guys are talking education a lot, and I'm kind of translating it to my experiences.
Cool.
So it's fascinating.
Yeah, please, if you have any time at all to write something for the handbook about it. This has been a continuous critique from other people who are not necessarily educators, and even some who are educators, saying, look, this is not just about education, and I totally agree. My opinions are extreme that it's about something very different from education. But
the way we work is, we have sometimes rough out a piece, or somebody writes a piece, and we just kind of hive edit it. So, you shouldn't feel like it's something you have to prepare in an elaborate presentation. It's just, if you feel comfortable having the hive work on it, we love doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, you could even start with an outline, and we could help you fill it in.
Well, and I still am pretty new in the getting all the thoughts together, and I have to be careful with corporate confidentiality as far as how I lay things out. But it actually is interesting, and I think it's significant to businesses, because businesses are in the same business doing a lot of the same thing. The only thing that makes them different are the people and how those people connect. And so bringing this in, I think, is an important element to the success of businesses, and understanding corporate environments and cultures, and why some businesses succeed.
Yeah, that's really cool. I wanted to mention, speaking of education, I know we were saying it's not all about education, but I want to mention something I found from a woman who at least goes by the name Dixie Pomerat. I don't know if that's her real name, but she's visiting Boston, it says here. She works at the Listening Project, so I can only imagine her name really is Dixie Pomerat, which is a cool name, and she's promised to join us sometime. But here, let me put this link to her recent Google Plus post that I commented on. She's saying education is not working because the price is going up, and I'm saying, well, wait a second. That in itself isn't a problem. What if what if you get what you pay for, and the price is okay? But then that was a kind of a straw man argument. What I'm saying is, what if actually what we see is a gigantic wealth disparity, and somehow that strikes me as related to what you're saying about businesses. That you've got so many people in business who are doing exactly the same thing, but then you've got a few who are very successful. So for every Facebook, what are there? Probably 1 million people who wish they were Facebook, and they're all trying to make these Facebook clones, but none of them will ever be Facebook. Anyway, so you might enjoy that Google Plus post by Dixie Pomerat, and I hope she'll join us sometime to talk about her views on education.
Yeah, if you look through the mind map that I put up, the one that's called the Perfect Storm, and again, it's more of it's really an outline. And it has links to various articles. But the reason why I call it the perfect storm, and this isn't just in education, you can almost pick an industry that's under pressure. And the reason why it's compelling is that it isn't just one reason. There are multiple really big reasons. And one of the things that you just mentioned is the cost of education. And it's huge because, as you were just mentioning, what you're getting back for the money that you're putting in has radically shifted in the last few years. And it starts to not make economic sense. At the same time, you have this tremendous growth of these peer-to-peer solutions and all sorts of things. Being able to put together your own educational experience, if you're disciplined or have some guidance, is, like it's never been before. So that's just two of the reasons, and you also have institutional reasons. The way that the educational institutions are set up, especially the state universities, they're going to get squeezed on a couple different levels. From the MOOC level, from the bottom up, these peer-to-peer things, and then from almost like the top down in terms of you have the big Ivy League schools that can do these fantastic MOOCs, puts tremendous amount of pressure on. So it's really like multiple tectonic forces going on. So that's why I say the next 10 years. The one thing that we can say is it won't be like the last 50 years.
Yeah, well, that's a great point. I mean, someone else had said, let's make a vision for the 50 years and make it very progressive and stuff. And I said, well, why don't we try to make a progressive vision of education for the next 3 years and not worry too much about the next 50 years, because things are changing so rapidly.
My son's now a junior in college, and he's at Vassar, which is a pretty forward-thinking school in a lot of ways, but it's also a very traditional liberal arts school, long-standing, and they have their own institutional rigidity, I think. But I worry, a little bit, because I don't know if he's being encouraged to think outside the box as much as could be.
It's an interesting question. Well, I mean, where I went, there was no box, so which caused some problems later on in my life when boxes started to appear and I didn't know what they were. So.
And Lisa, I would just say that I think that the same things we're talking about, although we're using a use case of education, is applicable across many industries. It's wherever the bullseye happens to land, and it's more and more industries. So.
I agree.
But again, I mean, I would push for this all becoming so much more clear in the Peeragogy handbook, so that we didn't have to have people coming along and saying, "Oh, well, it's too focused on education." If we could fix that for version 3, I would rest easier at night. Anyway, but speaking of homework in school, yes, there is a homework for this thing, and Charlotte nicely segued into it about 20 minutes ago. So let me run through this week 2 homework, which is probably the latest link I posted. No, before the other one, I'll post it again. You guys are probably on there already. Week 2 homework. Other people can support you in achieving your goal and making the work more fun too. So interesting, like the recommended reading here from Philip Schmidt talks about common-based peer production and education, and it's very appropriate to what we were just talking about. He basically says, you find learning at the heart of free open source software development. Why else would you do it except for learning? Well, there maybe are some other reasons, but it's an interesting paper talking about how could you make education more like open source software development. So
and he's the one at MIT Unhangouts, right?
Yep, he's MIT Unhangouts guy, formerly and currently with PDPU, formerly a Shuttleworth Fellow. So and this paper is very short. So of all the recommended readings, I really do recommend this one. Philip and I have somehow clashed in the past, but I respect him, or try to behave in a respectful manner towards him, because I do think he's a cool guy. And I think my clashes with him had more to do with how P2PU is structured than anything to do with him as a person.
The old driving each other nuts issue pattern.
Yeah, that's what happened. And maybe I was looking for something that was different from what it was. It was the same top-down, bottom-up. Oh, I wanted to say another thing about that, is that they're also having the rug pulled out from underneath them simultaneously, as Dixie Pomerat makes clear in this post, because funding is just disappearing. So there's all those aspects. Anyway,
who's having the rug pulled out?
education, at least public education. You know,
Yeah.
like my little sister is 13 years younger than me, littlest sister, and you know, my folks are saying there are no more scholarships anymore. You know, like when I went to college, there were these scholarships, and they said, no, not really. They're very, very, very hard to get, even if you're really, really smart and really good at stuff. But okay, well, fair enough. Wow.
Yeah, Joe, and and as probably everybody on the call knows, the student debt is now greater than the credit card debt in the U.S. And yeah, so there's tremendous economic pressure at work.
Yeah, it's very weird. So anyway, so the basic thought here is, okay, the first sentence, write an invitation to someone who could help as a co-facilitator on your project. So Charlotte, you've already got a co-president, but could you invite her to, say, join one of these calls or join all of these calls, and we can get her or him, I don't know if it's a her or him, on board. Yeah, most of these ones seem to be.
Yeah, I mean, she's the one who had originally suggested doing an independent publishing handbook as sort of an exercise for bonding.
Yeah, it's Tortoise. I vaguely remember her because I watched that hangout that you guys did. So maybe it's time.
Tortoise Isselhart.
Yeah, maybe it's time for a reunion to that one, and we could invite Anna back.
Yeah, she's currently kind of without a video card, but.
Yeah, but she came to your place last time. It could be another one of these hangouts in real life, but online kinds of thing.
Yeah, I'd love that. I think she would. She's an older person, but is a very broad-minded, sort of, kind of free thinker in a way. So.
Yeah. So that's the general principle. You may have an easy candidate. I invited Ray, but Ray is so busy with all of his other stuff. I was going to invite someone else to co-facilitate this kind of Planet Math 2.5 or whatever it is that we're working on. I'm a little bit at a loss about who it would be. Jim's busy, and I'm his research assistant or something, kind of techie assistant, just getting started, plus I've got this other job. But I'll have to think about it. Maybe I'll meet someone at the conference. Plus I could write the invitation and just post it online. Who knows who will show up.
Yeah, I think that, let's wrap up here in a few minutes, but I think Kurt's observation about the kind of the constant quality message out there, we could all do that, and it might be a little more, we might need to be a little more mindful, you know. It sort of comes naturally to me, but
yeah,
because I just like to, you know, when I find out cool stuff, I like to share it, you know. So, but that's not the mindset of a lot of people. So.
Well, yes, and as you're saying, it depending on who you share with, it can be. You were just saying, this is not a personal comment. You yourself said it can drive people a bit bonkers. So yeah. You know, but yeah. If they're new, they won't know. They won't know. And I think, well, for example, we've mentioned a few cool people. We've mentioned Philip Schmidt. We could invite him as a guest. That would be a very appropriate thing to do. We could invite Dixie Pomerat. She's an educator. Lisa, you may know some folks with like-minded views about business. I mean, I know Doug is an example. We wouldn't have to work too hard to invite him, but we should find out what he's doing so he doesn't disappear. And Kurt, I don't know if you've got other great pattern friends there in New York or in FIT, but think about it. See if you want to invite someone along.
Definitely think about it.
And then someone else who I know, who I would invite you to speak with, is Hélène Finidori, who actually will be in the U.S., but I think more in Chicago. She's in France or Spain these days, and she's kind of leading this pattern language thing on DebateGraph. We could invite DebateGraph.
Great. For example. Yeah, that sounds fantastic.
Elaine is awesome. Yeah. If we had invited somebody for each of the remaining sessions, someone who's kind of a well-known thinker on these issues, yeah. I think it would. I noticed that in my publishing Hangouts. You know, if you have sort of someone who's got some name recognition, it really helps the attendance.
Yeah.
Right. No, it speaks directly to what you were talking about. I think if you sort of have a guest speaker thing going on, it'd be really cool.
Okay. Well, Kurt, you are our guest speaker for the day, but I hope you come back again. And yeah, if you're not on the Google Plus group, you should be, because that's what we usually use for asynchronous communication.
And this is a link to Gene Ballinger's. Oops, I'm still not getting. I'm still keep hitting return, and of course it's posting the things before I finish. This is the systems guy I was talking about. So if you go to this channel, he's got a whole channel full of YouTubes.
Nice. Thank you very much. Well, see, that's someone we could invite, for example. Really
very,
cool.
very open. He's a real sharer.
Nice. Yeah. Well, then he probably would, if he's free at this time, he may be indeed willing to join. We also, just FYI, we do have meetings on Wednesdays, shifted up 3 hours later. So if this time is ever not good, or if you meet someone who says, "Oh yeah, I'd like to join, but it's not a good time," we've been meeting on Wednesdays as well.
Okay.
So well, let's wrap up. I think that we can move it to.
I'll stop the broadcast and we can do any business
Final.
that we need to after offline.
Okay.
Thanks everyone for joining us. I'll see you next week at Monday, 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time.
Okay. Thanks.